And welcome, Angelinos. We thank you for tuning in to yet another brilliant episode of the Galaxy Guy podcast, hosted by Chris Maldonado, a show made by loyal Galaxy fans for loyal Galaxy fans who bleed blue, white, and gold. So join us as we talk about the ins and outs, as well as the ups and downs of your favorite team, the one and only, the Los Angeles Galaxy.
Hola y bienvenidos, Angelinos. Welcome back, Galaxy fans, to the Galaxy Guy podcast. Como siempre, I'm your host, Chris Maldonado, and today we'll be talking about the LA Galaxy's 1-0 victory over their North California rivals, the San Jose Earthquakes, in Los Angeles. The Cali Clasico matchups are always quite testing, challenging, rowdy, just about everything in between. And in recent times, these games have gone sideways for LA, and well, it kind of wanted to go sideways this time as well, a little upside down. But the Los Angeles Galaxy was held together with some bondo, and LA managed to get that win at the end of the day. The second clean sheet of the season, that's a big plus. We'll be covering the lead up to this game. We'll be providing you with in-depth post-game analysis, stat breakdown, the usual stuff. And as always, we'll talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the game. To talk about all of this and help us make sense of it all, we have joining with us tonight one of the usuals, the stat man, Mr. Casey Cagle himself.
Hello.
Casey. And also joining us tonight to provide us with some expert knowledge, we have the very talented sports reporter and MLS journalist, Mr. Andy Deossa of Yahoo Sports. Andy, thank you for joining the show. How are you doing tonight, brother?
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here, man. It's a beautiful weekend in Los Angeles, Memorial Day weekend. Great Galaxy win, and that obviously leads into the break, which is going to make fans feel great. So I'm happy to be here to chop it up about everything LA Galaxy.
Awesome, man. And Casey, how are you holding up, man? I don't notice any sunburn on your skin today. What's going on?
Well, I was at the game yesterday, and I was under the awning in the second tier. So luckily I didn't have much contact with the sun. I didn't get sunburnt, so we're good. But as you said, this game often produces some really memorable moments. LA versus SJ. My very first game was actually David Beckham's debut against San Jose. It was the season opener, home opener, back in 2008. So it came full circle going back to the stadium yesterday for the first time after COVID. And it felt great, man. Galaxy won, and I'm ready to talk Galaxy with you guys.
That's good, man. And listen, it's going to be a good episode tonight. Certainly a good episode. We have a lot of stuff to cover. It's a good week, like you guys said, not only because the Galaxy won, but because, summer's almost here. It's starting to feel a lot like it. The Galaxy's got some new signings on the way. They'll be joining the fray soon. Sebastian Lletget scored a goal for the national team. That's nice. Positive stuff. And it does seem like the three of us are kind of rocking some beard here today. So this is officially the hairiest podcast on the internet this week.
I was going to say it's the best looking podcast that you've had, but we'll give Sebastian Lletget. We'll give Sebastian Lletget the crown,
He's up there. He's all right. Well, calling this look a little bit of the gingerbread man look, but we'll cover some stuff tonight. Andy, I've had back-to-back Colombian sports reporters on the show. Last week I had John Rojas on the show, so I guess I'm on a bit of a Colombian streak here right now. Real Colombian.
Como decimos nosotros, excelente, me gusta mucho.
That's right. What do you guys call it? You guys call it parceros.
Parceros.
Parceros. There you go. That's the real stuff, man. Real Colombians. That's what I like.
Sure.
It's a different mentality with South Americans, right? Because like
100%.
we were talking with John last week. It's different in South America. Soccer is not just a pastime or something that you do for fun. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of life, right? So it's very different. So all right. Hey, Andy, listen, for the folks out there who may not be too familiar with your work, could you tell the viewers what you do, perhaps some of the institutions that you work for?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm right now currently with Yahoo Sports. I'm a writer and also an editor. So I do a wide range of things, but mostly on the writing side, I'm covering both LA teams and MLS. So I'm doing LA Galaxy coverage as long as LAFC. And then also just looking at the league from a broader perspective, MLS as a whole, just kind of trying to pinpoint different stories. I think in my time here, I've been in LA for about almost 3 years in November now. So in my time here, I'm kind of just trying to get bigger stories and not so much focus on the on the field product and the recaps. And those things are necessary, but for my I guess my idea is to kind of do more feature stuff and kind of just like look at it from a different perspective, a wider range. So it's pretty cool, man. I can't complain. It's a beautiful thing to be able to be at both stadiums. Obviously, the Galaxy have the history that they have, and it's every time I step in there, it's amazing. And likewise for LAFC, the rivalry is great. I've covered the Zlatan days, which were also amazing. And it's just been a really it's been a blessing, honestly, to be able to step into the market at the time that I did, knowing that LAFC had that season that they did, but they still had the rivalry with the Galaxy, and the Galaxy were still weighing over their heads. And just the way everything has kind of transformed has been amazing to be able to be, as a fan, be able to cover, but also as a writer, just have access to all that. So that's been great. Prior to, I was at ESPN. I was doing some digital work at ESPN for about 5 years in Bristol, awesome. Connecticut, which was amazing. And before that, I was at the Boston Globe as a sports correspondent as well. So I have a decent little background. Luckily, I've been able to move around, and I'm just happy to be in LA, man. It's a great place. And like I said earlier, having those two teams be at the peak of what MLS really wants, and the attention and the players and all that, it's amazing. So I'm grateful.
Hey, well, we're glad to have you, and I'm sure you're enjoying the weather and the food.
100%, man. 100%. The weather. Every time anybody asks me anything about LA, the weather is always on the top of the list.
Like right behind In-N-Out, right? All right, man. So good. We're in good hands tonight. It's safe to say that you're very well versed on MLS in general, the Galaxy. So we're definitely going to need your insight tonight, man. But before we get started, I would like to thank all of the viewers of this show, especially those who constantly show their love and support for us on social media, on Reddit, Discord, via DMs. The positive feedback keeps us motivated to continue to strive for bigger and better things. Listen, everything we do here on this show is done with love and passion for not only the team, but for all the Galaxy fans out there. Not a single individual, but all. So please feel free to leave comments below the video. Give us a like. Let us know what you did like, what you disliked. All comments and feedback help us grow and improve. I appreciate it all. So really, guys, thanks a lot. Muchas gracias. And that's it. Just wanted to say that. But without further ado, let's get into the meat of this sandwich. Andy, Casey, what do you say we talk about Saturday's match versus San Jose Earthquakes? Shall we do it?
Do it. Cali Clasico.
Cali Clasico. There you go. Great. Let's do it. So in the lead up to this game, it definitely felt like LA was a bit deflated after last week's loss in Portland versus Portland. It was a very upsetting loss on the road. It was the second time this season that LA gets blown up in the Pacific Northwest. The other time, of course, was in Seattle by the same scoreline, 3-0. After last week, the Galaxy still managed to hold on to third place, though, in the Western Conference. And now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it did seem like this week, this match against San Jose, it was a much bigger game, and there was far more to prove for the Galaxy than it seemed at surface level. Let's talk about that. What do you guys think? Your personal takes on this, and we'll start with you, Andy, because you're the guest. Did the LA Galaxy have something to prove in this game, and what did they have to prove in this game?
Yeah, I think they 100% have something to prove. I mean, you think about the Portland game, and we all know that game is a lot different if it's even, if they're not down a man. So right. Obviously the injury and the incident is something that you never want to see happen, and it's just the way that the game unfolds after that, it's a new dynamic. And you're talking about a team that I always like to mention this when you speak about the Galaxy, that they're still trying to build this team and find what their best options are. So when you think about a defense that Greg Vanney has openly said needs to improve in certain aspects and needs to be faster in certain situations, it's when you're a man down and now you're throwing that line for a loop, it changes everything. So 100% they had something to prove. They're coming into a game. But I think the thing that I take out of it the most is that at the Galaxy, I've said they want Dignity Health Sports Park to be that fortress, that they want fans, teams to go there and they already think that they lost. Like it's already half
Sure.
of a loss knowing that you need to travel to Carson. And I think that's what you see. I think that Vanny, all the players have said it, and Vanny himself has said one of the main objectives was that we have to protect this home field advantage. And honestly, that's underrated because you think about the difference of last year to this year with now that they have fans in the stands, and it makes a enormous difference. I mean,
For sure.
you're looking at a team that is still new, and I think Bond said it the best probably a few weeks ago was that we're still in a learning process and we're going to be in this for a while. But the fact that they're able to be in that learning process and get 3 points and get these results is what puts them over the top right now. So I think that they knew that they had something to prove, and it's a home game. It's a rivalry game. They had the LAFC game, and they know the way they want to play these rivalry games. So that's my biggest take, that they're really keen on defending this home field advantage. And once again, you get that clean sheet. The way that Bond is playing, it's gonna go it's gonna go leaps and bounds into the future. So that's my biggest take over the game.
Yeah. No, hey, that guy Bond played a pretty good game this week. But listen, I'll ask Casey the same question, but I'll throw this in there. Okay. If the Los Angeles Galaxy had not won this game on Saturday, they could potentially be sitting in 5th or 6th place right now in the Western Conference. That's just one place above. And granted, there are still some games being played right now. I think Portland just finished theirs. Luckily, they lost. Seattle's still going right now. But Casey, what do you think, man? Going into this game this weekend, did the LA Galaxy have something to prove? And if so, what was that? What was the main thing that they had to prove this week?
Yeah, I think it had the most implication, I think, for morale. Coming off the back of a pretty harsh loss away at Portland. You want to come out of that at home with a victory, and especially when you're down 2 key players in Leggett, who is on international duty, and Derek Williams, who was of course serving his suspension for that nasty tackle. Of course, like Andy was talking about, you want to put on a show for the home fans, and you want Dignity Health Sports Park to become that fortress. And, I think it would have left this team a lot more deflated had we not had the same result yesterday. Even a draw would have probably taken a lot of wind out of our sails. And so, it was time for this team to turn things around and say, look, we can come back from a loss like that. We can have an inspired win. We can, put things together. And even though we have these key players gone, we're still the Galaxy, and we'll take it home for our fans against San Jose.
I can agree with you on that. Had this team drawn on Saturday, it would have felt like a loss. Mm-hmm. It really would have. And it would have deflated a lot of morale, not only with the fans, but I think with the team as well. But good. I mean, I can agree with what you and Andy both said. Let's talk about that starting lineup. Okay. Of course, we had Bond at goal. We had Julian Araujo at right back. Steris and Nick DePuy were that center back pairing. Of course, Nick is filling in for a very, very suspended Derek Williams, and he will probably remain suspended even after the international break. He probably won't be back for maybe at the start of August. Well, I mean, it could be that long, right? In the midfield, you had Jonathan Dos Santos paired with Sasha Kleshton, which was a bit surprising to me. In that center attacking midfield position, we had the kid, Efrain Alvarez, his 3rd start of the season. On the wings, you had the Frenchman, Kevin Cabral, playing on the left. You had, opposite to him, you had Cameron Dunbar. And, of course, up top, the sole striker, you had Javier Chicharito Hernandez. Casey, what were your first impressions of the starting 11?
It was nice, but also interesting to see Dunbar in the starting 11. And obviously, considering performances from DePuy and Steris collectively in the past, that's kind of a big question mark. Mm-hmm. But as we'll get into as we review this game, I think it all worked out for the better. I'll say this word again. It was my word of the week a couple weeks ago. Synergy. There was just great synergy there between a lot of players who don't normally get the start. And it was good to see Dunbar in there. And, DePuy, I think, deserves some minutes after his performance on Saturday.
Sure. Andy, any thoughts on that starting 11?
Yeah, I mean, you think about what Greg Vanney has to work with and the circumstances, right? Like you said, you have Sebastian Lletget that's with the U.S. national team. You have Derek Williams suspension. You're still nursing a Victor Vasquez injury. So there's dynamics that go into making this lineup. I think Cameron Dunbar has been deserving of more minutes, and these are the opportunities that they will get the same way Efrain Alvarez goes into a game and starts, like you said, the third one in a row. There's going to be times that this is going to happen. So I think for them to be able to do this on a rivalry game on a big stage and in a moment, like you said, that you need to bounce back from this 3-0 loss, it's amazing. Obviously, the back line, you're going to have your thoughts and your worries because of what they're coming off of the past. But Nick has been, I said this from the opening game down at Fort Lauderdale, he had a hell of a game down there, and he's been showing a lot of improvement. So I think you're able to feel a little more comfortable when you see subs like that. And granted, Derek Williams has been amazing in the games that he's played, and I'm not taking anything from that. But the Galaxy have a lot to work with, and I think that's what you're seeing now. The depth that Greg Vanney has been so adamant about building, you're seeing that, and you're going to continue to see that as these Wednesday game roll around. You're going to get more Ethan Zubaks. You're going to get more Cameron Dunbar, and that's great. I mean, the Galaxy have a great group that they're going to be able to roll out. So I like it. I like the changes. I don't like when teams are so stagnant and they get stuck in the same 11 because it starts to get predictable. So I'm a big fan.
For sure. And it does feel for the first time in a very long time that the Galaxy does have depth, and they can bring in these replacement pieces, and it's really not a huge drop off in talent, and you guys are speaking about Nick DeBue having a good game. He honestly had a fantastic game, in my opinion, one of the better defenders on the night. I mean, he had 53 accurate passes. That's more than just about every other player on the field. And the pass success rate was 90% for him. He had a tremendous amount of distribution coming off that back line. His positioning was pretty decent most of the night. Had some very good defensive saves. So I can see him getting some more minutes in there. My other takeaway for that starting 11 was that Sasha got the start. Not only did he get the start, but he actually played a full 90. Mm-hmm. Now, I think Vanney's intention wasn't to play Sasha 90 minutes this game, but I think it just happened that way, given that Jonathan Dos Santos had an early exit. I think minute 50 something, 51 or 52, something like that. But Sasha went full 90, and in all honesty, it became a little evident there towards the end that Sasha Kljestan is definitely in his mid-30s now. He wasn't really the fastest guy ever, even when he was younger, but it was definitely noticeable there. He did all right on the night, but we'll discuss that further along in the next section. But Andy, I'll ask you this specifically because I know you've been covering MLS and the LA Galaxy all season. You've been in there, you've been close. What have you noticed as far as progression is concerned? Have you seen progression with this team since preseason? Maybe if you want to call it evolution or growth. Have you seen that with this Galaxy?
I have. I honestly have. And it's the word that's been talked about, I think, since the beginning. It's culture. I mean, I think starting the season the way they did, and I hate to keep going back to this Inter Miami game because it feels like it was so long ago, but I was actually down there in Florida, and it was amazing to see that they were able to bounce back the way that they did, and it just having that be the spark to start their season. And from that moment is when they were talking about the family aspect and how they want to be such of a family. And you could tell that cohesion is there. You could tell that they're comfortable with each other. They're understanding each other. They know what's going on. And I keep bringing it back to the same point as like, this is still a new team. It's not full. Greg Vanney still has players that are not even in LA that he's still counting on. And he's trying to mix a group of people that don't speak English, that are from a French league, with a group of younger kids that are from academies, with a group of veterans like Chicharito and Jonah Hernandez. So it's not an easy group to mix. So I think Vanney deserves a lot of the credit for what he's doing. I mean, he's been amazing. And I wrote that, I think, prior to the LAFC game. Like, Chicharito has been great. And obviously you love to see him score and you love to see him have a bounce back of what he did last season. But this is all on Vanney and the coaching staff. And the players from the top to the bottom will tell you, Jonathan Dos Santos has said this is the first time he's ever felt these vibes in the locker room, just that. So I think that's really what I see. But on the field, when it comes to the actual play, I see more ideas. You get so used to seeing a stagnant, I think more so in the Zlatan days, obviously, you get used to seeing a stagnant, let's try to pressure to the striker. And Chicharito obviously is not that type of striker, but you bring a player in like Kevin Cabral that gives you a whole different aspect and dynamic of attack. And you get players like Efra that are able to push forward. And I think depending on where you pull a jet, you have a whole different side of that attack. So I think that what I see the most is that they're not one-dimensional, and they're able to adapt to the situation. And Greg knows the league, obviously, so he knows what his opponents are gonna come in and try to plant. And I think his confidence, along with how he's training these players week in and week out, you can see it every week. They know that it's going to be a different test, but they're up to the challenges. It doesn't matter if it's a 1-0, if it's a loss, if it's an own goal, whatever the case may be, you could tell that these players are really up for it. So I see every week them actually getting stronger.
Absolutely. And that's it strikes me when you say that, because you've said it, I think, twice now. You've used the word stagnant, and it's you're like spot on there, because that's exactly what this team has felt like in previous years. They felt like a stagnant team. It's just it's not, it's predictable, and this season it doesn't feel like that at all, right? I mean, I'm sure Casey will agree with me. We've talked about it plenty on this show. This is a different Galaxy team, different outlook. There's just so much positivity. You talk about the players in the locker room having fun and being more relaxed. It's not just about a party atmosphere. It's a mentality thing with the players, right? They're in that stage where they're so content, happy with the way things are being run, that they're actually having fun. And it's noticeable. The players are having fun on the field as well. They're attempting cheeky stuff like nutmegging people, which, according to John Rojas, doesn't work most of the time. And it's no indication of you being good. But
beautiful Twitter clip, I'll tell you that much.
It's a beautiful Twitter tweet. That's right. But I can agree with that, man. And I asked that question to the reporters that come on my show, and they've pretty much all said the same thing. It's the same sentiment. They've seen the growth. They've seen that progression, the evolution of the LA Galaxy, even from the start of preseason till now, right? And it's ongoing, like you said. There's a lot of pieces on the way. Vanny's counting on players that haven't even gotten their visa yet, So although it was good to see Sega posting from Dignity Health Sports Park. So he's here just in time, because a certain center back of ours is probably not going to be back on the field for a very long time. So it's good that we have that reinforcement. But hey, listen, let's dive deeper into some stuff. Okay. We're moving into the section of the show where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, there were a lot of good moments to talk about in this match compared to the Portland game last week. Definitely a lot different. So naturally, let's get started with the good moments. Casey, we'll start with you. What were some good things, some good moments that you saw out there from this LA Galaxy team?
Well, I mean, I'll start with the obvious. You touched on it earlier, Jonathan Bond, who was just an absolute stud between the sticks yesterday, along with the defense. I mean, I touched on it earlier. Dupuy and Steres would usually be a big question mark starting at the back, from previous season's performances, but I think they were super strong, holding things down in the 18. And you had Araujo on the wing, who was absolutely killing it the whole time. I mean, he was part of most of the attack. He was burning players on the right side. He was just exceptional. And again, I'll bring up the word, the synergy. This team moves the ball so well. And like you were talking about, the evolution starting from the preseason, you saw them play in Tucson, starting with some of the fundamentals of like just pass to each other in the back. Let's start building out of the back. They started with the basics, and they've built up to this very creative and, like you said, Andy, multi-dimensional team that is, at full strength could compete with, your Seattles, your LAFCs, your NYCFCs, Columbuses, if they can, fulfill their full potential. And if we can find make a good run into the playoffs, I think we'll be the team to beat.
Hey, listen, it's starting to sound like deja vu every week, right? We talk about Jonathan Bond, but we'll definitely talk more about him in detail further on in the show. But Andy, let me ask you the same question, brother. What were some good moments for you during this match, San Jose, LA Galaxy?
Casey said it to me, is Araujo has been, I think, in the past 4 games, the biggest revelation of what this Galaxy team has. And we know that he's a good player, and he's also still young. And fans of the U.S. men's national team want him to keep growing, regardless of what your rooting interests are. But I think from that LAFC game on, and prior to as well, but from that LAFC game on is really when you saw him just kind of like hit it up another notch. And he said it after the LAFC game, like, I get excited for these games. And sometimes when you hear a player say that, you're thinking, okay, sure, like, I saw it, but maybe he might regress a little bit. And he has not taken a step back. He's been the bright spot for them. And I think he needs to keep getting that praise, because this is what Vanny wants him to do. He wants to keep challenging to keep that level up. And if he continues that level, it's going to be nothing but great things for Araujo. So that's really the one thing that I key on is Araujo has been great for the past, let's say, month or so, and it seems that it's just continuing to get better.
Oh, for sure. Ever since that LAFC game where he just put in a monster performance, he's been top level MLS fullback, like top level for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone soon. Whether or not it's to Europe, who knows? I mean, he could potentially be a starter in a Liga MX team as well. There's a lot of opportunity for him, a lot of growth. He's still a teenager, man. He's still a kid. You guys remember where you were at 19, still kids, man. So he's got a long way to go. And the sky's the limit for him. For me, Julian Araujo was a bright line, obviously. The entire back line overall was just really, really good. There were obviously some moments where the positioning was bad. I think there was a play where Caden Cowell, is it Caden Cowell, right? I get him confused. Yeah, Cade Cowell. I get him confused with
Cowell, Caden Clark, same difference.
It's the same thing, right? So there was a play where he kind of split the defense, and it just, for some reason, Daniel Steres and Julian Araujo were both covering him. And another San Jose player kind of snuck in a shot there. But, aside from that, the back line was very solid. And the biggest takeaway for me with that back line was that towards the end of the game there, San Jose was really peppering the Galaxy goal. I mean, we'll talk about that as well, and some certain stats with a certain goalkeeper. But in any other season previous to this season, that back line would have collapsed. That back line would have collapsed, and the goals would have gone in.
100%.
The defense did not fall apart. They kind of had their moments where they were overrun. Wondolowski came into the game. Wondolowski's always been a thorn in the side of the Galaxy. He always finds some space, and he always manages to hurt us somehow, right? And it felt like he was about to. There was times where I had to bite my nails there a little bit, but this Galaxy defense didn't fall apart. So that was a big takeaway for me. A very good, positive, good overall. But yeah, like you guys said, you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head there. The pretty good. So let's unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about as far as the good stuff, we can move on now to the bad moments in this game, right? We have to talk about that. And Andy, we'll start with you. Why don't you get us started here? What are some bad takeaways from this match?
I think you kind of just alluded to it, and it's not like a huge let's say like a folk interest point, but the Galaxy have been a little nervy closing out games, man. And you go back to the LAFC game, even after Jonathan Santos goal, and it seemed a little like, well, they might still tie this. Or you go back to a Red Bulls game, which had who knows how many minutes of stoppage time. And I remember being at the stadium, like, what is going on down there? Like, people are falling, getting yellow cards. Like, it just seemed at any moment, like, things could go astray. So, and then obviously with this one, and I think that for Vanny, he kind of mentioned after the game, like, we need to be able to close these opponents out when we know that we're the better team, and we know that we have the advantage, and we know that it could come back and bite us. These 1-0 leads might not be the best thing, or these close, games are not going to be good for us, because you're still, like I said earlier, you're dealing with a fairly new team and a fairly new back line. And when you're under that consistent pressure, like you said, it's easy for them to fold. And in the past, we would expect that. Now, granted, they have been able to pull these results out, but you don't want that to continue during the season. You don't want them to be, cagey in the 80th minute or in the 75th and beyond. So I think that's one thing I've noticed. It's kind of just been a little bit of a trend, but you're kind of nitpicking at things, right? Because they're still getting the results. But it stood out to me because it's like, man, for the faint of the heart, it's not going to be a good time watching this Galaxy team in the last 20 minutes if they're up one.
For sure, man, for sure. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with the midfield, I think. A lot of tired legs out there towards the end. And like the commentator said on TV, listen, Matias Almeida definitely made the better substitutions. They came on and they immediately changed the complexion of the game in favor of San Jose. The Galaxy substitutions took a little bit. Victor Vasquez had his moments where it was like, okay, it's very visible and obvious that he hasn't played in a couple weeks. His fitness there wasn't there, but and obviously Sasha was very tired. But What do you say, Casey? What were some moments out there that you thought were bad during this game for the
I
LA
mean,
Galaxy?
I agree with the nitpicky stuff, really. I mean, there were a couple of bad giveaways in the midfield, like you mentioned, the tired legs towards the end of the game. And it's the fatigue towards the end and closing these games out that we used to struggle with, and seem to be able to contain teams better now, but it still looked a little bit shaky. I had my fingers in my mouth biting my nails, and I think really there wasn't too much bad to take away from this game other than those nitpicky things.
I can agree with that. And listen, I'm going to be very nitpicky myself, but I have to say it, right? To me, the bad takeaway from this game is that the LA Galaxy had 21 total shots on the night, eight of which were directly on target. And yet the LA Galaxy ended the night with one goal, which really was an own goal by San Jose. So you can throw some luck in there as always with own goals, right? Had that goal not gone off the foot, probably would have been caught by the goalkeeper. Who knows, right? So it just doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. 21 shots, eight on target, and then we struggle to score a goal. It just doesn't sit well with me at all, right? And, part of that is Chicharito had another quiet night, not for lack of trying, because he was definitely hustling. He was trying out there. He was dropping deep into the midfield, trying to recover balls. He kind of almost played more of a midfield position in this game, but the passes just weren't coming to him. And something really interesting about Chicharito on the night was that he actually finished the night with the second most 1v1 duels won on the night. He had 7, which was just behind Jorge Villafaña, who had 10 total. And it wasn't close with all the other field players. Chicharito had more successful defensive duels won than Jonathan Dos Santos and Sasha Kleshten combined, who had 3 combined, right? So it feels like since the start of the season on this show, we've been saying that LA's midfield really has struggled to play down the middle, to create chances for the offense, to create chances for Chicharito. And this game was that game to do that, because listen, San Jose really opened up the midfield, really opened up that midfield. There was a ton of space for LA to just do just that, to play through the midfield, right? Even the commentators on TV were saying it. The players were just running from one end to the other, almost with no opposition. It was very open. And LA still struggled to weave those passes in through the San Jose defense down the middle, which in my opinion is more proof that this midfield definitely needs some major work. I don't know, just some nitpicky stuff, I know, but it's symptoms to something bigger, right? It's just these small symptoms to something bigger. That was my bad takeaway. I don't know what you guys have any thoughts on that, or
Well, yeah, just to elaborate on that a little bit more, there was just lapses in finishing in this game. I mean, you had Chicharito hit the bar once, so many shots on goal, so many runs at goal, and the fact that we only scored once was kind of both unnerving and surprising as a fan in the stands.
sure.
Yeah, to elaborate on that, I think it's kind of twofold with Chicharito, because I keep saying this as well, but he got off to such a fast start, and I think that Galaxy supporters are so used to just like, okay, he needs to score every game, and it's like that's not gonna happen. Like it's just not gonna be that way. Like
Sure.
I hate to bring it back to the Zlatan days, but like he's not Zlatan. He's not that person that you're gonna expect to see a goal every game.
Sure.
But along the same lines, like Kevin Cabral just came in, so you have to give him a little bit of time and see how he's gonna adapt and how he's gonna be able to help Chicharito out. We saw early in the season, Ethan Zubek was that guy for Chicharito that was able to free it up a little bit. But along the same lines, it's like when you have a player like that, it's so much easier for an opposing defense to key in. And it like there's obviously going to be a lot of focus on Chicharito, which is why I said earlier, when you have players like Efrain Alvarez and Sebastian Lletget that are able to push the game upfield, you're going to start seeing those opportunities for them to score more goals, because a lot of the attention is going to Chicharito because people are like, oh, wow, like we already knew what he could do, but he's scoring now. Like, let's focus on that.
Definitely.
When you introduce Cabral and Lletget and Efrain, whoever else may be that is pushing that game upfield, it's gonna continue to open that Galaxy attack. So I agree with you. There's gonna be games that Chicharito's quiet, but that's not a knock on what he's doing. Like you said, he had the chances and he's making those movements, and I think that's the most important thing to see. That even in games that he's quiet, you could still see that he's into it and he's still moving the way that Vaney wants him to move, and it's gonna get there. There's gonna be those moments that they're gonna be able to connect, but he's been locked in from the beginning, and it's good to see. So I definitely agree with those takes, Chris.
For sure. And we have some help coming, right? So that's definitely going to free up, a defensive midfielder is going to free up that midfield to do a lot more of that chance creation, right? So we'll be looking forward to seeing that. But unless we have anything else to add on the bad side, I think we can move on to some of the ugly, right? The ugly, of course, and guys, let me ask you, okay? Let me ask you this question because this is my ugly take, okay?
Oh boy.
When was the last time you can remember that all three of the Galaxy designated players started a game together and finished a game together? Because honestly, that's my biggest ugly takeaway. I can't seem to remember the last time that was. I mean, it might have been recently. I don't know. But it just, we've had so many injuries with designated players. Of course, we're talking about Jonathan Dos Santos. He left the game early in the 50th minute. It just seems to be an inability to stay healthy with him anymore, which, by the way, is not a new issue, right? Even when he was younger, he struggled to stay healthy. Now he's 31, right? Father Time is undefeated. Time catches up with everyone. He continues to battle these nagging injuries. Earlier in the season, he was having continuous issues with legs cramping, which he himself admitted during a press conference that it's not due to poor hydration or diet, but rather it's a biomechanical issue with just, the way his muscles are structured, the way he plays, the way he runs. It's created that issue for his body. So I don't think that's something you can repair, especially at 31 going on 32. How can this Galaxy team build that consistency in MLS in a league where you absolutely need your DPs to be consistent? How can you build that consistency when one of your DP players is constantly injured or not performing to his full ability because he's injured, right? So I don't know. Andy, what do you think about this? And Casey, I'll ask you the same question, but we'll start with Andy. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's a consensus on Jonah. Obviously, with the ugly, you never want to see any player go out with injury. But if there's a player on the Galaxy right now that you don't want to see limping off a field, it's definitely Jonathan Dos Santos, given the past. And you mentioned it, and I think that's the most important part, that he has spoken about it openly and said this is not a hydration issue, it's not a preparation issue. And I think that's the part that's the most concerning, because he's a little older now, and Galaxy fans, I feel like they're kind of like wishy-washy with Jonathan Dos Santos at this point. Like there's obviously respect, and you see that he could in any given moment make a sprint upfield and give you that winning goal like he did against LAFC, and all is great, but you need him to be on the field, and from a DP you want him to be able to play those 90. And I think as we mentioned, with Greg making these moves, he's going to try to alleviate what Jonathan does, and I think that's what the most important part is. Like, maybe he's not 90 minutes foot anymore. Like he's not ready to go all the way to the end. And it's unfortunate to say that, but it's like, if you do realize that, then let's bring these players in that are able to kind of alleviate that, because what you want is him to be able to be on the field every game, obviously, like I mentioned. So
sure,
it's concerning. It really is, because what he's able to give you. And I think that he, coming off of the last few seasons, he's such a motor when he's on the field. And I always say this, speaking to Galaxy fans, like, people are so quick to say, oh, maybe Jonah had a quiet game. And I'm like, but when Dos Santos has a quiet game, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, he's not the type of player that you need to be mentioning all 90 minutes. Like, if he has a quiet game, that means he's doing his job. He's in the space that he needs to be. He's defending well, and he's moving the ball up, and he's letting everybody else in front of him take care of that. Sure. So I think that it's a unfortunate situation, and hopefully Benny says that, it's not anything that they fear right now. But if it continues to be a lingering issue, as we've seen in the past, it's not going to be good for them, because he's captain. He's a player that that they're expecting to be vocal, and I think his energy kind of is something that rubs off on the team a lot. So
sure,
I want him to be at 100, and unfortunately he hasn't been there, and maybe we won't see him there or not. But it's kind of tough.
Yeah, man. Silver lining is that, we do have an international break coming up. So whatever that issue is, Greg Vanny said, I asked him during the press conference what it was, and he said that Jonathan's calf muscle was just feeling tight. and he wasn't too concerned about it. So I guess we'll see. I mean, we've heard that one before from the Galaxy. Oh, it's not a big thing, not too concerning, and then they're out for like 3 months, right? But we'll see what that turns out to be. Casey, let me ask you this, and this might be a little bit of a controversial question with a controversial answer because Andy said it, right? A lot of people are kind of wishy-washy on Jonathan Dos Santos, but is Jonathan Dos Santos still a DP caliber player?
Well, I mean, you guys kind of touched upon it. The key to being successful in any MLS season is longevity, and that's having players that are healthy, not only through the regular season but through the playoffs. And to be spending DP caliber money on a player who isn't going to give you as many starts as most other DPs average in the league, then it might be time to sever ties or restructure the contract, because really I think what we saw with his brother Gio is we've found ourselves bound in these deals that don't really pan out well for us in the long run, and it almost seems like a train robbery where players walk out with millions of dollars and all we have to show for it are a couple of wooden spoons. So I think it's a tough call with Jonah Dos Santos, because as Andy touched on, you get those really genius performances from him from time to time, but as I said, you can't be spending DP caliber money on a player who's not going to give you that longevity through the regular season or through the playoffs. It's just it seems like a waste at that point.
Hey man, listen, don't bad talk Gio Dos Santos, okay? The single greatest DP this team has ever had. 6 goals in one season at $6 million per season. I mean, dude, that's value right there, all right? $1 million per goal. The most expensive goals in MLS history. But listen, I'll add a little bit of context here. I've played soccer for the majority of my life, okay? I'm also 31. I know that for some people out there who probably weren't athletes or didn't play soccer, didn't play the sport, 31 is not old, okay? And they think about it and they're like, he's not old. Why are people concerned, Listen, in context, speaking for myself, at 31 now, it's a different ball game for me, right? It's the injuries are ridiculous at this age. When I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, even my late 20s, I could play 3-4 times a week, have a game on Sunday, and still feel great and just recuperate. By Tuesday, I'm not sore anymore, right? It just works differently. After I hit 30 into my 31, it's different. Your body changes so much. It really does. You're sore for like 5 or 6 days now. The joints start to hurt, the knees. Things don't heal as well as they used to. You used to sprain an ankle at 22. You're good by next week, If I sprain an ankle now, they're going to have to treat me like a racehorse and put me down because it's different, So just a little bit of context.
Steep curve, very steep curve once you hit your 30s, my friends. To all our listeners under 30.
That's real. I'll be 30 in November, so I appreciate the invite.
Enjoy while you can. Enjoy while you can, Andy. I mean, I look at your Instagram, dude. You're a pretty fit guy. You're staying active, but take care of those knees, brother. Take care of those knees.
The funniest thing is I actually sprained my ankle like 2 weeks ago playing soccer, and I'm like, when can I get back out there and play again? I'm like, let me take my time because it's not worth it.
For sure, man. For sure. So, not ancient, but definitely getting up there in age, and these injuries do matter. And even in the offseason, he spoke about possibly retiring, because of the nagging injuries, and again, this is coming from his own mouth, he thought about retiring. To me, he just doesn't scream DP contract anymore. It just doesn't scream DP contract. Like Casey said, possibly restructuring or just cutting ties, moving on. This team desperately needs a creative midfielder, so if we go out there and get a playmaker, a DP playmaker, in my opinion, that would make this team complete. But we'll have to see. He still has the rest of the season to prove us wrong, right? But that was my ugly take, guys. Any ugly takes on your end? I have to ask you guys.
I think that's a fair consensus, and I think even the Galaxy front office is probably looking at it the same way. I think it's not something that you just glance over and say, "Oh, this is not a bit of an issue." Like they know that. I think Jonah knows that. He's talked about him wanting to prove something this year with the team and really wanting to win, because I think he feels that this might be the latter end of my time here. So that's not far fetched at all. And I think, like I said, it's a consensus of what the big takeaway from that game was.
Sure. Casey?
Honestly, I did have an ugly point for this game, and it's been quite a little quiet on this front for a while, but I'm going to go ahead and complain about the pro referees in this game yesterday.
Sure.
Because then in the merry-go-round of MLS criticisms, their turn is now up, and there was some horrible officiating in the game yesterday. Some really scrappy moments, some embellished contact on San Jose's part, and just some cards that really weren't very deserved. And I think professional referee organization has some chinks in their armor that they need to work out, but I think that's been something that's well known for a long time for most MLS fans, so it's nothing new.
Oh, for sure.
I laugh at that. Sorry to cut you off, because I laugh at that. I went to I don't know what game it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, I don't know. I just remember having a picture of a fan outside of Dignity Health Sports Park that it was like the fresh jersey when it just came out, and it says MLS refs suck. Like, that was the whole thing. Wow, you really paid the money to get that jersey printed, and he was so happy. And I was like, I need to take a picture of this, just because I think it was when Zlatan was still here, and how much he had his say with the refs. And I was like, wow, it's funny, but I feel it.
Hey, it's always the same usual suspects, and I don't even remember who officiated the game yesterday, but it's either Valdemiro Toledo, Kevin Stott, or Ishmael El Fath. Yeah. And there's one other, but they're always terrible, and they give the most questionable calls and cards. And I don't know, the standard needs to be raised there. I think that's something league wide that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the league is profitable enough to the point where they can invest in seeing eye dogs for these refs. I might get in trouble for that one, but. No, I can agree with that, man. It's just some horrendous stuff. It's very Mickey Mouse stuff, but all right. We talked about the good, we talked about the bad, and we talked about some of the ugly. Let's talk about individual players, right? Let's talk about first who we thought had the worst performance or just the worst night, and then we'll obviously talk about the MVP, right? We have to talk about this one particular player in our minds who we thought had the worst performance. And I know it's kind of hard to say after a win, right? Especially such I don't want to say a good win, but an important win, right? I feel like the team as a whole did pretty well. But Andy, let me ask you first. I know some names will probably come to mind when we talk about poor performance, but who do you believe had the worst performance of the Galaxy players on the night?
I'm going to say this name, and it's maybe not the worst performance, but I'm going to say it for a particular reason, and it's going to be Efrain Alvarez. Just because, like I mentioned earlier, you want him to get these chances, right? And you want him to get on the field, and he's a young kid, and he's still going to be learning a lot, but he's so on a pedestal. Like, they tout him so much from a level of quality. And he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I think he's amazing. I love when he's on the field, the way he moves. But you see him get these chances, and you're like, oh my goodness, how'd you not finish that, or how'd you not bury that? And I think that's the next step of the growing curve. So when I say, I don't mean perhaps the worst player on the field, because I'm sure there were other, players that you could pinpoint. But for him, it's like that next step is that finesse and that finishing touch. Is that's, if he's able to get that within this next training or this next month or two, he's going to be able to boost that attack so much. So I say that his name just because I want to see him get to that next level, because when he does, it's going to be problems. And Efra has been growing from the past few seasons, and he's learned to play against, quality players, obviously Zlatan, Chicharito, Jonah, and the names are endless. But once he gets that, that next move, that next step, it's going to be, because I've seen just these few times he started in these last few games, I've seen amazing things. And I think when he went into the field on the LAFC game, I was like, oh, he's just out here just messing around right now. He's just having
sure.
fun. And I'm like, he's that type of player that he could do that. So it's like, I want to see that next step, because when it happens, it's going to be amazing.
I can agree with that take, and I definitely see the same thing you see. It's a ton of potential there, and it's just it needs polishing, right? He needs that polish. I can agree with that. Not the player that I chose, but I can agree with that. Casey, let me ask you the same question. out of all the names that come to mind, which Galaxy player had the worst performance on the night?
Yeah, no, I mean, not to say that anybody had a poor performance necessarily, but yeah, Alvarez had a really quiet night, and I also think Villafania had a little bit of a quiet night. There were some situations where he did get a little bit caught out on the wing, and gave San Jose a clean run on goal. But that's those are just things that happen when you're playing as a wing back, and it's again nobody had a poor performance, but there were a couple of players who were a little quieter than I'd like to usually see.
Sure. Jorge Villafania, he was a little quiet on the offensive end. I'll give you that. To me, though, I would say, now I know this is going to come off a little controversial here, right? I would say that Kevin Cabral, not so much a bad performance, but rather a bit of an underachiever in this match. Now, hear me out before I get all the comments in the DMs. Hear me out. I do believe that Kevin Cabral had some downright brilliant moments in this match, and we saw glimpses of the beast that he can become. Just he manhandled that defense in a couple of occasions, right? So he's definitely going to be a beast in this league. There were some plays that he had where, like I said, he just dominated that defense, right, for the most part. But he made some very silly mistakes, and he had some chances where if he had just played more simple, he could have easily had at least 2 assists in that match. But he decided to play for glory, right? And he ended up throwing away several good chances. All in all, I just think that he needs to do a lot less, really, because it's flashy, it's fancy. He likes to dribble the player and take them on, and then he likes to cut. And, he tried to chip the goalkeeper when he could have very easily just laid it off to Chicharito and it would have been a guaranteed goal, right? A simple tap in. But I don't know. I just think he's trying too much when he can just maybe try to make it a little more simple, and we could see some more assists. Because listen, Matt Granger, who's one of our other co-hosts, he said it last week, right? He's the voice of reason for a reason. He was spot on in his analysis of Cabral last week. He said, basically the kid was brought on primarily to provide service to Chicharito, right? Let's not kid ourselves. Of course, his secondary duty is to score goals as well, right? We're aware of that. But he seems to want to take all the shots himself, instead of being an outlet for Chicha, and making those passes. So I don't know. That was just my underachiever of the match. I think he could have done so much more, again, if he had just played simple. And I don't know. I guess it's just, let's chop it up to eagerness for now. He wants to prove himself. He's young. We know how young athletes are. They want to score the goals and go for glory. But I do think he had, out of everyone else, the worst night. For those reasons, not because he's a bad player, just because he could have done more and he didn't. I don't know. Am I crazy?
No, I think that's spot on. I think that this is what his second game starting, his third appearance, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he shows those glimpses, and that speed is incredible. But like you said, his purpose is to kind of just kind of be a aid to Chicharito and that offense. But it's also what we mentioned earlier. When you come from a country that is so involved in soccer, like, he's not coming here to say, I'm here to assist Chicharito. He's coming here to say, I'm in LA. I'm going to show MLS who I am. And I think that's what Greg is going to have to work through with him and bringing in all these other French players. Like, okay, let's ground this a little bit and let's say, hey, you could be great. You could be what you want. But we also have to realize that this is pushing the team forward in this way is what's going to help us the most, not you as an individual. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's only one Zlatan. It's not the way that Pavon played with Zlatan was the same thing. Like, Pavon could have came in and been whatever he wanted to be because that's his nature as a player that comes from Argentina. Right. But he knew his bigger purpose was, I need to play for the guy that's right here, and that's that. So Cabral is going to go through those process and learn that, but I think he's going to be great, man. I just like seeing him take on defenders.
Oh,
and
for sure.
That's such a foreign concept now sometimes that you try to play back into the side, and he's like, you know what, man, let's do it. I got the speed. I'm ready. He puts a little more weight on. He gets a little stronger. He puts a little Samuel Grandsir and just bullies the defender. Like, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough.
For sure. And he's 21, dude. I mean, he's got so much growth. I mean, physically, he can grow so much more, right? You know, get a little strong. But he was manhandling that defense, and I see a lot of that in Grand Sear as well, where he tries to dribble too much sometimes, or he tries to take on a player when he could just pass it, or he tries to do a fancy pass and it just doesn't go as well. So I think that's a conversation for them to have with Greg Vanny. Like, listen, get a translator in the room and let them know, whatever you have to say to them in French, but just tone it down a little bit, play a little more simple. It's MLS, but you're not above it. It's still a tough competitive league. So take it serious. And that's it. That's it. I guess we're still being nitpicky, guys, but unless there's anything else, Casey, you got anything to add? What do you say?
I think, send our resident Frenchman Nate Doty down there and give him the hair dry treatment.
Take them out for some poutine.
Yeah. Maybe he can make them paint more beautiful pictures like this one.
That's
a great picture, by the way. I love that.
That's right. That's the
iconic moment. Iconic moment.
Yeah, that's right. But I think we covered that. We covered the good, the bad, the ugly. We covered the worst performance. We have to talk about the MVP, guys. We have to talk about this now. As far as the MVP of this match is concerned, I don't think anybody out there with a pulse will argue against who the MVP of this match was. So it was definitely Sasha Kljestan. But, so how about we do this? We'll go ahead and say it together at the same time. What do you guys think? We go on the count of three, and we'll say together who we thought the MVP of this match was, just for fun, some giggles. We'll go on three, right? So 1, 2, and 3. Jonathan Bond. That's right. See, anybody out there who watched the game, Jesus Christ. I mean,
yeah,
it's ridiculous just how good he's been all season long for us. Casey, I know that you did some stat analysis on Bond this week.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have for us, man? I hear there's some very special stats on Bond.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a save maker most of his career. He's played through League One with Peterborough United, in the Championship with Watford, where he had a save percentage of around 62 to 66% on average. Peterborough in League One, he actually had a save percentage of 73.2%, which is pretty insane at that level in League One. He actually currently has a save percentage of 82% for the Galaxy.
Wow.
In the short amount of games he's played, which is extremely impressive.
That's ridiculous.
I made the claim a few weeks ago. I hate to say, be the guy who said I told you so, but I think he is the top, if one of the top goalkeepers in MLS right now. I mean, his numbers are insane. His best season came and in League One 2017-2018 with Peterborough United. He had 120 saves in how many starts? It was 37 starts, which is pretty insane.
Jesus Christ. How many? 120
saves. Yeah,
120 saves.
And he had only 48 goals against.
Okay.
So it's kind of a leaky defense. They went on a record of 15-11-11 that year. His most successful season probably was with Reading in the Championship as well. He had a 66% save percentage there. But I mean, the guy, he's got numbers from the mid 70s all the way up to the 100 percentile in save percentages.
Wow.
Most clubs he's played at. So the guy is a brick wall. I think he just needed to find the right squad and opportunity. Obviously, playing for sides like Peterborough in League One and Watford in the Championship, aren't the most elusive destinations, and some of those squads are often thrown together.
Sure.
So I think he just needed to find a place for him to be himself and be confident off the line and make the saves that he does. And I think he's going to continue those numbers for us going forward. So we'll see as the season progresses. He's only played 7 games, and with an 82% save percentage, I'd say we're in good hands.
That's ridiculous. Literally good hands. Now,
Yeah.
there was an interesting stat that actually Chris Glidden, one of the PR guys for the LA Galaxy, he said during the press conference, this 12 total saves on the night for Jonathan Bond, that is tied for most, or second most, if I'm not mistaken, in any game for any LA Galaxy goalkeeper, and that's ridiculous. And if I'm not mistaken, he's still leading the league in total saves, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's mind blowing. Andy, any thoughts on Jonathan? Anything to add to the Bond? Is the real deal? Is he the real deal? What do you think?
The hype train. Casey, I will one up you. I'm gonna one up you right now, right? I mentioned this earlier. I was at the Miami game, the season opener, and I tweeted that day. It might be too early to say this, but I'm going to throw this out there. Jonathan Bond will be in the conversation for MLS Goalkeeper of the Year. The first game of the season, I said, you know what? I've seen it already. And it goes to the fact that, we got to see him a bit in the preseason. But, man, like, if you're talking about being secure back there, it's as good as you could get right now. And the pundits will say that, MLS has their way of thinking when it comes to those awards. And, the amount of volume he's getting may not be the best thing for him in that award category, but I don't care. He's been the best goalkeeper this year in MLS by far. It's not even close. And we're seeing it on a weekly basis. And it's not so much that he's just good. It's like he's having these moments, these double saves. Like he had one this past game. He had one notable one in the LAFC game, which was incredible.
Insane.
And like he's just so good to get back on his feet or get back composed. And it's amazing. I asked him yesterday after the game, like, do you feel the love? Like you're a fan favorite now, and it's happened this fast. Because if you remember, like coming into the season, Klinsmann was still kind of like the ideal, like maybe he might be number one, maybe we don't know. But he's like, I feel it. Like I feel, he said he doesn't like to check social media a lot, but he hears it in the stadium. And that's like the stuff that just keeps building him up. I think as a vocal leader, he's been big. And for you to have a keeper on that level that's able to not only give you the security and provide that, but also be kind of a personality, not just be a quiet goalkeeper. Like you could tell he's a personality in that locker room. And you could tell that they're kind of feeding off of his energy, feeding off of those saves. And like I said, the amount of volume may not be the best, and that's more so on the Galaxy defense and what they have to fix. But it doesn't matter if he's making the saves. It really doesn't. Like he could get 24 shots on goal if he's saving 24. Who cares what the defense is doing? So it's been incredible. Listen, I've been driving this hype train from week one, and I'm going to continue driving that all the way to the end of the year.
Hey, there you go, man. Listen, I this week this week people were calling the guy a wall. I don't know. I personally coined and it's kind of rhymey, right? But some people out there who might be familiar with the material Bondo, right? You use it to patch up things that are broken or dented, and it's super strong. It holds. It's thick. It hardens like a rock. I don't know. It just came to mind. Bondo Bond, because he's patching up that defense. He's making it solid. So yeah, I mean, I'm so excited about that guy. And I said it, same thing early on in the show here when we kicked off season. I said, listen, he's looking like the best goalkeeper the Galaxy's had since Jaime Pinedo. Mm-hmm. And to be in that conversation with a goalkeeper like Jaime Pinedo is not you don't take that lightly. You can build a championship team, a championship defense around a guy like Jonathan Bond. This is the type of goalkeepers that you win MLS Cup with. So definitely something to be excited about. And
it's
you know
funny
what?
Too, because MLS or Galaxy fans have built a separate Mount Olympus of Galaxy players specifically for goalkeepers. I mean, they have such a big place in our hearts. Players like Donovan Ricketts, Josh Saunders, even Jaime Pinedo, like you mentioned.
Sure.
I mean, they're cult figures. Kevin Hartman, of course, they're cult figures in Galaxy history. And, if the fans get around them, I think we'll see, we'll see more performances from Bond like that this season.
He'll be in that conversation for sure. If he continues the way he is, he'll be in that conversation, in that Mount Rushmore, Mount Olympus, say it, of Galaxy legendary goalkeepers. Of course, Mike McGee also in that conversation. The game in context for maybe some people who haven't been following the league very long, that game, and it was against San Jose, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Where I think Josh Saunders went down injured, and then the backup goalkeeper also went injured, and Mike McGee put on the goalkeeper gloves, and he had a clean sheet.
Yeah.
So it was crazy, man. But the talk of Galaxy MVP is really really heavily, it's Chicharito, right? I mean, fans are just talking about Chicharito being the MVP this season so far. And I get it, right? It's because, as always, a striker gets the most attention on the team, right? Because they're the ones scoring the goals. People love to see goals. Goalies really do a thankless job for most of the time. If they're doing a good job, it's zero, and they just go unnoticed, And that seems to be the case here. But in my opinion, I'll be honest with you guys, Jonathan Bond is quickly becoming the MVP candidate for this LA Galaxy team in 2021. I mean, he's keeping us in these games. He's keeping us afloat. He is single-handedly keeping us in these games, where they could easily go sideways for us. This game could have easily gone sideways for the Galaxy. We could have seen this Galaxy team go down by 2 goals, maybe more, had it not been for Jonathan Bond. So I don't know, but unless you guys want to add anything else, I think we've covered the MVP. What do you think?
Yeah, there's no way to argue that. And I say this, I wanted to ask him this yesterday, but it was kind of just like, probably know what type of answer you're going to get. But when a goalkeeper gets that type of volume, like, you're like, how do you feel about that? Because when you're high volume, it's like you're talked about because your team is not necessarily doing what they need to be doing. But as a goalkeeper, like, that's only going to continue to improve your form. Like, I think they're not going to say this on record, but I feel like you would rather have those type of games than a game that you don't get tested. And I think that's the reason why we continue to praise him so much, is because we are seeing him get tested and he's able to, answer these calls. So it's amazing, man. It's been great.
Absolutely. Fan favorite so far this 2021 season. He's even got his own Instagram support page now.
I love it.
So it's good. But listen, unless you guys have anything else to add, I think we've pretty much covered everything with this game. And we do have a 2-week international break coming up. The Galaxy won't see action until Saturday, June 21st. That is a home game versus the Seattle Sounders. That will be the first full capacity game at Dignity Health Sports Park in over a year, right? Well, remember the last time we saw action there was over a year ago when it was full capacity. So we will definitely be covering the lead up to that game right before June 21st. So stay tuned. I do intend on putting out content during this international break, some special stuff I'm working on, also some collab stuff with other podcasts and other reporters on the Galaxy Family Discord. I know Andy will be a part of that. So definitely stay tuned for that. Casey, thanks a lot for being part of the show again. Always great having you, brother. We've come a long way from those Reddit forums, the Reddit days. Shout out to everyone out there in Reddit land, our home base. Andy, muchas gracias, hermano. I mean, why don't you go ahead and tell people where they connect with you on social media, wherever it is that you're on?
Yeah, thanks to you guys, man. I'm a fan of the show, and it's always good to kind of chop it up with people that, obviously know what they're talking about. So keep it up, man. I'm always, whenever you need me, I'll be here. Simple. My name, Andy Deossa, is ANDY_DEOSSA. That's my Twitter, and that's usually where I'll put out most of my content, all of my content rather. I'll tweet while I'm at games. I try to go as many games as possible, so I'll be in the stadium, in and out, and in the press calls, and hopefully in person soon. But until then, I'm writing as much as I can, and it's all on Yahoo Sports. So check me out there, and I appreciate all the love, and I appreciate you guys for having me.
It was good having you, brother, and it won't be the last time, man. So we'll have you on. But I think that's good, guys. We call it a show. Muchas gracias to all the people that watched. Thank you very much. Again, I can't say it enough. I've been your host, Chris Maldonado, the Gingerbread Man, and I want to wish everyone out there an awesome week, a great international break. We'll hopefully see all of you guys back in the stadium starting June. So for the Galaxy Guy podcast and my guest host,